Have you ever wondered about the engineers who first put a front-facing camera on a phone? I'm sure that every team everywhere around the world that was working on the projects had the same thought. Now everyone can make video calls. We can see each other when we speak. It's a science fiction dream coming true. As we know, unintended consequences have a way of cropping up. Could any of those engineers anywhere in the world have imagined how many people would be using those very same cameras to take pictures of themselves? If there is an encapsulation of our culture, surely it is the selfie. The pictures we take of ourselves and then share with others. Wish you were here to see how great I am. Of course, the selfie camera soon necessitated the selfie stick, because our arms just aren't long enough to get that perfect picture. Does anyone remember actually asking passers-by to help us with a photo? Seemed like the most normal thing in the world. Unfortunately, the pursuit of the selfie has led to increasing numbers of what are known as selfie deaths. Hundreds of people around the world, at least, have died while taking pictures of themselves. They die behind the wheel. Accidental firearms discharge. I imagine holding the camera and the gun, they just squeezed the wrong button. Many have died while trying to get closer to wild animals for a better picture. Bears, rattlesnakes, bison, elephants. Many have drowned after falling into bodies of water. The most spectacular method of selfie death is certainly those who have backed up off of cliffs trying to get the perfect picture. One after another, people from all around the world have fallen off of cliffs with their backs to the danger, arms extended with a phone. Some of the more spectacular falls involved a man falling 130 feet at Machu Picchu in Peru when taking a jumping selfie. Another tourist in Peru at the Gokta Falls fell 1,600 feet while trying to take a picture. Perhaps the champion of this method of death was a tourist at Sri Lanka's World's End Park who fell 4,000 feet down a sheer cliff to her death while taking her own picture. It's really hard to explain such reckless disregard for a cliff's edge. I understand that facts have taken a beating in our era, but do we not agree on gravity anymore? We could never put up enough guardrails to protect people from their own impulses. Thrill-seeking, even desiring a close brush with death, is just part of the human psyche. Now, it's easy to dismiss these deaths and the hundreds of others that we probably don't know about as the result of pure stupidity. In my darker moments, my thoughts may even go to a place of, I hope they died before reproducing. But of course, there is a deeper level of understanding to this. These deaths are really a result of a disconnect between human desire and knowledge. The immediate desires and impulses of human hearts can overwhelm the rational mind. Our rabbis understood that at the core of every human being there are two basic impulses, one to good and one to evil, Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer HaRa. These are two basic forces that push and pull us through life. Both, however, are necessary to live as a human being. An ancient midrash, based on God's pronouncement after the creation of the first human being in the book of Genesis that it was very good, Tov Ma'od, goes as follows. Rabbi Nachman said in Rabbi Shmuel's name, "Behold, it was very good," refers to the good impulse, and "behold, it was very good" refers to the evil impulse. How can it be that the evil impulse is very good? That would be extraordinary. But without the evil impulse, no person would build a house, take a wife, or beget children. And so said King Solomon, "I have seen all toil and all skillful labors, that it is a man's rivalry with his neighbor," from the book of Ecclesiastes. So Nachman, channeling Jewish tradition, communicates the tension that dwells in every person. Wonderful and necessary things do not always have the purest of motivations. we are subject to jealousies and competitiveness. We shouldn't forget that the biggest motivator for us to put the first person on the moon, with all of the amazing scientific discoveries that benefited our society and that our efforts yielded, was simply to get there before the Soviets did. As Nachman notes in the Midrash, while it may be a mitzvah to have children, there is something of a degree of self-interest involved in producing them. The best of intentions and deeds do not always result in what we desire. We all know the aphorism, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We know a person who was purely altruistic wouldn't last long. After giving away everything you own to help the less fortunate, after donating every organ you could, what would be left for you to live on? As Hillel said so many years ago, Im ein ani li mi li, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? Human beings are a complicated mess of impulses generated from our biological inheritance, our experiences, and our intellect. Good impulses don't guarantee good outcomes any more than evil ones necessarily lead to bad ones. Our impulses alone are not enough to make us into good people or, God forbid, bad ones. This is because our intellects and our wisdom are indispensable. Think again of those selfie deaths. I am confident that they were all accidental. There is no evidence at all that people were intentionally jumping off of cliffs. What's so remarkable about all of them is the utter disconnect of impulse and intellect. If we approached anyone and asked them how they would take a photograph of a person at the top of a 4,000-foot cliff, they would all answer certainly, carefully, and not to back up as close to the edge as possible. It's rare that the choices that lead us into negative behavior, though, and the terrible consequences that result therefrom, are as stark as the edge of a cliff. Yom Kippur, above all other days, bids us to consider our own behavior and the boundaries that we are willing to accept and implement for ourselves. In our American context, how many freedoms are we willing to give up? How many things that we might like to do, that feel good, can we separate ourselves from? We should make no mistake. Bad choices often feel good at the time. We are still in the throes of a national opiate crisis. And while we can come up with many good reasons why people should not take opiates outside of their limited medical circumstances, none of those reasons would be that it doesn't feel good to take them. After all, that's the entire crux of the problem. The argument against having extramarital affairs is not that it doesn't feel flattering to receive attention or to give in to our lustful feelings in the moment. After all, temptation is awfully tempting. Rather, we understand the destruction and the pain and the hurt that follows acting on those impulses. It's our intellects that hold us back. This is why we hold the study of Torah so dear in our tradition. We can learn to overcome our impulses when we put them into a context of tradition. There's an awful lot of wisdom to be gained about consequences. Wisdom to be gained about the higher purpose of our lives. The more we learn, the greater the breadth of situations to which we can apply our wisdom and our restraint. Today, we strive to meld the impulses of our hearts and the thoughts of our minds into one. We strive to curb our unspoken and darker impulses and bring them into line with what we know to be good and right. The words of our liturgy, the confessions we make in one voice and alone, all of it reminds us of our inner impulses and how easy it is for any of us to back off of the proverbial cliff. A favorite teaching of mine about how close the experiences of the wicked and the righteous through this life truly are. Rabbi Yehuda taught, in the future, at the end of days, God will bring the evil impulse and slaughter it in the presence of the righteous and in the presence of the wicked alike. the righteous, the evil inclination will appear to them as high as a mountain, and for the wicked, it will appear to them as thin as a strand of hair. Both of them will weep. The righteous will weep and say, "How were we able to overcome so high a mountain?" And the wicked will weep and say, "How were we unable to overcome this simple strand of hair?" Jewish tradition has never demanded that we be perfect. Instead, we are commanded to accept our human existence for what it is. We recognize that we are filled with flaws and with contradictory impulses. But after we accept all of that, we are also commanded to strive to be more, to learn words of Torah and live them, to accept the limits on our behavior that we have been taught, to see the cliff's edge even when we don't want to know that we will fall short and then struggle and rise again, to climb with full effort until our dying day for the top of the mountain and never give in to self-satisfaction, to see ourselves clearly, not only for who we are today, but for who we might yet